Hi, I'm Shellie Geigle with J&S Hobbies and Crafts, and today's tutorial is on an explosion box. And this is the Steampunk Daze explosion box, and for those of you that don't know what that is, well, simply you take off the lid and it explodes. And inside here we have fold-outs, different things that you can use to store your photos. It's quite the conversation piece. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we'll be making today. Okay, explosion box overview. So I have the camera in my hand and I am going to go around, and because this is dimensional, I'm going to kind of just push this around a bit so you can see the outside, and then I'm going to open the lid. And hopefully we won't need Dramamine. Okay. So this particular explosion box, as with most of them, has an inside. And inside here is just a cone, and what we do is we decorate around it. So we'll take a look at the cone first. And there's not many supplies with this, which is nice. So just a few things and that's all you need. Okay, got the camera back up on the tripod. The first layer, the inner layer, there are some magnets in here. The magnet right here is holding this shut. And you can place a photo here, and you can use these. Over here there isn't a magnet, it's just a fold out. And one thing I did do on this is so that if you wanted to just slip something in there, you could. This flops down, and there's plenty of room. You can even journal on one of these cards, glue it down here, put a photo, or whatever you want. The sky's the limit on what you can do with this. And up here, we do have a small pocket. Okay, that's the first layer. And second layer is this. And I am going to zoom in a little bit because I do need to hold my flaps up a little. Here is just a pocket, and we can just take that right on out. And I've done this. And we'll go down to the final layer down here, and then we'll turn it and take a look over there. This you can slide in here. Matter of fact, I'll grab one of these. You can slide something right on in there if you'd like, or create a small picture mat. And then this flips out. So you can do whatever it is you'd like with this. Okay, let's turn this so you can see a little better, or move it anyway. Okay, my layer is up, and on this, places for photos. We flip that up again, another place you can put something there, or journal. But this is really neat because this actually, you can untie this, and this part folds right on out. And it goes right back. There are a lot of pop-up squares that I did use in this to help give it some dimension. Alright, let's take a look right up in here. We saw that. Here, same thing. And we have a small little pocket. You can slide stuff in, or a picture, whatever you'd like. Here, we have another place for a photo. And this, when you look around on this, you can go this way when you're have it on the tabletop or whatever. This is magnetic and it just folds out. And it will hold this. And then what I've done is I've created another layer here, or a flip up. And you can definitely put stuff in there. This is a really fun project. Over here, you've seen this. And you fold that up. And there's a place right here that you can do. There's another little fold out here. More pictures. And again, there is a place to put a picture right here. You can untie that. This is just sitting there and the ties hold it. And this folds out. So that is our explosion box. Let's go on to the materials list of what we'll need. And I think when I had the camera over there, you can actually see this a little better. And this is tough and it is sturdy, so it's gonna last. Let's set this off to the side. The most important ingredients is the DBS Steampunk Daze paper collection. We do need that. You are going to need 3 sheets of 12 by 12 black cardstock. You are going to need 3 sheets of 8.5 by 11 black cardstock. And for those of you wondering what brand I'm using, I am using for the 8.5 by 11 and the 12 by 12. They're both the Coordinations Black Cat. And the 8.5 by 11's value pack. You have 50 in a pack. It's quite the money saver. And then we have the 20 pack here. And that's what I use. You will need for adhesives. You'll want some score tape for this. We don't use a ton of it, but you will want some score tape. And you will want a good glue, and I suggest getting a metal tip for the top. And you can get those separately. It's just this, and all you do is you slip it on like that, and you're ready to go. I recommend the Art Glitter Designer Glue. There's no glitter in it, that's just the brand name. It dries clear. It's a great universal glue that does not leave greasy residue. It's good for metal, paper, resin, everything I've come across it's good for, even fabric. You will want some of those pop-up 3D squares or circles. I'm using this. You will want to get some ink. We do ink around the edges because we do a lot of fussy cutting. I am using Memento Toffee Crunch. This is a good brand and this is a good color. And you will need either some jute or some baker's twine for those little fold outs that we had to tie. It's up to you. If you have none of that, a ribbon. Ribbon works really good. The final ingredient is a 1/2 inch Martha Stewart punch. Now I'm using the one that comes in the combo pack. It comes with this and then a corner piece, which I hardly ever use. But this is the Flourish Lace, and it's called the Martha Stewart combo punch around the page. But any 1/2 inch punch will do. I lied. There's one more thing, and that's magnets. And I'm using the 3/8 of an inch one, and it's about a 1/16 inch thickness, and they're really heavy duty. All you need is 6 of them. Let's move on and start our project. So before we start scoring and cutting, some helpful things that you will want is, of course, a paper cutter. You will want a scoring board for this, and you'll want the wide platform because we are using the 12 by 12 sheet. If you don't have a wide platform, what you can do is just measure and carefully fold where we're scoring at. Ruler, pencil. My best advice for fussy cutting is to get a small scissors like so. The smaller the better, the easier it is to get around. Let's begin. Grab a piece of 12 by 12 cardstock, place it on your scoring board, and we are going to score this at 4 inches all the way around. So there's 4 inches, and then I'm going to turn it. Okay. 4 inches. And again, 4 inches. And this is what you should look like. All right, let's grab our second sheet. We'll get to this in a moment. Our second sheet of 12 by 12 cardstock, we are going to cut this down to 11 1/4 inch by 11 1/4 inch. So let's do that. Now it's very important, if you're new to my tutorials, you are going to keep every piece of scrap until the project's over. I do use them, and instead of digging into more cardstock with our scraps is how we are going to make our pockets and fold outs. So I do like to conserve paper as much as possible. So on this we are now 11 1/4 inches wide by 11 1/4 inches tall. Let's place this on our scoring board. And if I can find my tool, here it is. We are now going to score it at 3 3/4 inch on each side. So this is 3 3/4 inches for me on my board. And I'm going to turn it here. Let's grab our last sheet of 12 by 12 paper, and we are going to cut this to make it a 10 1/2 inch by 10 1/2 inch piece of cardstock. So let's do that. Place it on your scoreboard. Now we are going to score it at 3 1/2 inches all the way around. Okay, we're going to set that off to the side. Now grab 2 pieces of 8 1/2 by 11 paper, and we're going to cut these down to 7 1/2 inches by 7 1/2 inches. So let's do that. Okay, on each of these you're going to do the same thing. So on the first one we are 7 1/2 inches wide, 7 1/2 inches long. We are going to score it once at 3 3/4 inch. Now we're going to turn our paper once, and we are going to score it at 3 3/4 inch. Okay, let's do that with our other one. 3 3/4 inch. Turn it once. 3 3/4 inch. Okay, we do need to score this right down the middle. Now, to ensure that you're on the same score line, this is what I do. I just place this right on up here, and I'm actually at 5 1/4 inches where my tip fits, and my side's hitting the side. Now, it's hard to line up when you're getting down here because there's no lines at the bottom here telling me where 5 1/4 is. I usually take my ruler pull it down 5 1/4, and 5 1/4 is this line. Now I know I'm on the right score line, and all I'm going to do is score that right down the middle. So I'm going to also do that with this. I'm going to stick that right there. Make sure I'm on the right line because it will create a mess. You only want one score line down the middle there. So go ahead and do yours. Flip these back over. What we are going to do is fold now. And I am going to use my tool to burnish. Okay, so I'm folded in half. And I'm going to fold it in half this way. Okay, now I'm going to flip that over and I'm going to fold it. Now, if you notice, whoops, there we go. If you notice, once you have it like this, it will now fold together nicely. So let's do that again together. So grab it like this, find your middle scores, your ones. I'm going to fold on this one. So we've done it this way and this way. I'm going to flip this over. And that's where I'm going to fold on the diagonal. Okay. Now holding it like this, actually like this, you will notice that your pieces will want, if you pull this down like so, your pieces will come into place and make a nice little square. What I did now to make sure all my folds were good is once I had it like this in a square, I just went on around it like this to make sure it's going to sit down properly and square. Okay, set these off to the side. This is the 12 by 12 sheet, and what we're going to do is start with this. We're going to do one thing at a time. All we are going to do here is fold on our score marks, and I need my tool again, and you're just going to make sure that it's lining up nice. And we're going to do this for all. Just making sure we are all folded up. Okay, once you've done that, we are going to make several cuts. All we are going to do is cut these corner pieces out. So what's going to be left is this and this. And you know, I am going to stick this on my paper cutter and just cut up a little bit here, and then I'm going to cut up a little here so that we can get rid of these outer squares, and we are going to retain them because we will be using some of those. So let's do that. This is what you should have. So all we did was remove the outside squares. Moving on to these, we're going to do the same thing. We are going to fold on all the score lines. And then after we're done with that, we are going to do the same thing. We're going to remove the outer squares only. And we will do that on our last piece of 12 by 12. So let's do that. So I have all three of mine, this one being the bottom, the largest, the middle, and the top. Take these two. We're going to work with the largest piece first. I like to work on mine actually from the outside in. In your paper pack, you will find this. You've got the train, we've got the rows, we've got all these different panels. And we also have a trim piece here. So we are just going to cut this right through here. We'll release the trim piece too. And then we're just going to separate these right in the middle to start. So this, stick in your reserve pile. We want the key. This goes in reserves. We want the goggles. We want the wings. The rose one goes off in reserve, and we definitely want the train. So we'll set these off to the side, the others in reserve. Let's start with this, because what we're going to do is end up cutting this down to fit, and we'll just flip that right on up, and we're going to be gluing that down. Okay, this is 4 inches wide. We need this to be 3 7/8 of an inch wide. However, we need to have this centered. So this is the easiest way for you to do it, because when we're trimming these panels off, one of us may be closer to the edge or closer to the other panel when we cut right down. This is the easiest way. Stick your ruler up like this. And what you are looking for is 3 7/8 is right here. I've moved mine in. I want even spacing. So I know that when I cut this right here, if I was to make a mark here and here, I'm going to have, it's going to end up being centered. So once I've made those marks, we are going to trim off this side and this side. So let's do that. I hope that made sense. What we're trying to do is center this panel so that the image is centered. If you were to place it up, you should have a little bit of black on either side, which I do, and it looks centered. So now all we have to do is trim it here and here so that it looks like this, centered. So what we're going to want to do, because this does need to be cut down, is I placed my ruler down. I'm not using the measuring part. I'm just using it to keep me a little bit of a straight line here. I placed it slightly above this ring. I then made a mark with my pencil. Okay? From that line, I put my ruler there. Now I am measuring. I'm measuring down 3 7/8, and I'm going to put a pencil mark. Now all I have to do is trim that on each side, and that should keep me centered on the outside of these panels. So I've got mine cut down. Let's see how I did here. If I was to place this on here, I should have black all the way around and even, and I do. I'm going to back this out now. Let's get our ink. I'm going to use a finger dauber for this. We will be inking almost everything that we do in this project. And all I'm going to do is just go around the edges here on the whole thing. And I think this dauber got mixed up, and it has a different color on it. Oh well, that's alright. It's close enough. I am going to change my dauber out though. So I've inked around all the edges. I am going to pull this up. I'm going to apply glue onto the back of this. And sometimes the easiest way to see anything where your edges are, matter of fact, I will just grab one of these, is just stick it down so you can see where your edges are. It's hard for me to see black to black, so, and if I just mount that right like this, it's going to give me my edges. So let's go ahead and do that and glue that down. Let's go ahead, turn that, and I'm going to use one of these for the back so I can see what I'm doing. And we need the key panel. And we are going to do this exactly as we did before. Actually, if you just lay this one down, I'm closer over here. The closer you are to whatever edge, this may be easier, is just to put it like that, giving us, because we know that we need a little bit of that showing. Place your ruler down, come over to 3 7/8, make your mark, trim it. Okay, I trimmed mine. Put that off there. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm just going to place my ruler down so I can keep a semi-straight line. Just going a hair above that top of that curve there. Make a mark. Now from that, I'm going to measure down 3 7/8, make a mark. I'm going to trim in here and here. And we're going to repeat that for every one of these. So let's do that. I've got all mine cut. What we're going to do is, before we do anything, is put it on there and make sure you are fitting on each one of these. If you need to do a little more trimming, trim. And then what we're going to do on all of these is we're going to go ahead and ink around the edges, just like we did the train panel. So let's do that. Okay, grabbing the key, here is our train. So grabbing the key, we are going to center this on the front and glue that one down first. So let's do that. Okay, the next one that we want is the goggles. So we're going to center and glue that one down, and then we'll move on, and the wings will go right here. So let's go ahead and finish up and gluing those down. I've got all mine down. We'll get to that in just a moment. Now the idea is, how I did mine here is I had a front. So when I created these, I did it for eye appeal, and when you open it up, this is supposed to be my front, the back. And so what I am going to do here is find my train. That is my front, so that's where we are going to start. Okay, so let's locate this paper in our paper pack. On the back it looks like this. We're going to measure over 3 7/8 of an inch and cut that. Go ahead and put this off in your reserve pile. Now looking at yours like this, measure over 3 7/8 of an inch and cut it. Okay, stick this off in your reserve pile. We want this, set that off. Now measure over 3 3/8 of an inch and cut it. On this piece you're going to do the same thing. Measure over 3 3/8 of an inch and cut it. Set that off to the side. Set this one off to the side. And find one of your 4x4 black cardstock scrap pieces. Okay, 4 inches across, 4 inches down. At the 1/2 inch mark, we are going to score it. Whoops. I need that. There we go. Let's go ahead and fold on our score. And we are definitely going to use our tool here. I forgot, measure over 3 7/8. We're going to trim that down. Much better. Okay, so take your little lip there. We're looking at it like this. we're just going to attach it just like this so that it's covering your paper. Pinch it, fold it over, and now you can use hot glue or white glue for this, whatever you would like. And we're just going to glue that down, just like so. Grab 2 magnets. One you're going to place down like that. Now, grab this sheet and make sure you're not on your score, but you're going to bring it down to where you have a little black showing on each side. Now, if you were hand cutting these out, you will always want to check your cuts here. And if you need to trim it down so you can fit better, go ahead and do so. All we're going to do is apply glue once we know it fits. And place it right over that magnet. Now close this, take the mate, take the mate so it can find the magnet right there. It'll find its mate. Then all we're going to do is apply a little glue there. Okay. Now, on your last sheet here, you'll find Cherish the Moment. Let's cut that out. Okay, I've got mine out. Also in your reserves, you will find a very thin piece of black cardstock. We're going to use that too. We are going to cut down Cherish the Moments. I'm just going to go on one side here and then the other side. Making them a little, trying to get them even anyway. Now we're going to ink around the edges. Once you've inked around your edges, all we're going to do is mount this, leaving about a 1/16 inch of black framing around this. All we're going to do here is just add a little glue on each side, which will also give you the option of sliding something little up there. In your reserves, you will find another strip that's slightly wider. Measure over 4.5 inches and cut it. The larger of the cuts, the one on the right hand side, goes back in reserves. Grab your 1/2 inch punch, and we're going to punch along the long side. Once you've got that, just measure over a 1/2 inch and cut it to trim this down a bit. Okay. All you need to do is put a very thin line of glue at the bottom of this. You're going to place this so that you have flaps on either side, because we're going to wrap these edges around the back. Oops. And then we're going to just bend them and tack them down. Now, looking at it like this, just flip it right on up and let's glue this down. Make sure, if you have to trim to make sure you're going to fit. I know we did wrap this. If you end up having to trim this down, not a big deal. Just add a little bit of glue and tack it back down. Now, as far as this piece here, when we get to that paper, we will take a trim piece, a scrap piece off it, and that's what's going to go across here. In the meantime, flip this up first, make sure you got the train, and let's glue this down. We've already checked, it's going to fit. Now for this one is where our sheet like this comes into play. We're first going to decorate this, so you can slide that off to the side to get it out of the way. Now you'll want to, how I did mine is, I have it to where my diagonal scores are over here. So I'm just going to lay that out in front of me. Okay, I've already cut mine, but grab this out of reserves, and what you're going to do is measure over 3 9/16 of an inch and cut it. Measure over 3 9/16 of an inch and cut it. We're going to apply glue to the back of this, and this is our first square. And it goes up here in this corner, and you do center it so that you've got black all the way around, making sure that you are not on any of your score lines. Grab this, measure over 3 9/16 of an inch and cut it. Check to make sure you are going to fit in the square, and you should. And we're going to apply glue to this and mount that. Now, one thing is, if you are unsure about measurements, I do have a tutorial out there that might help understanding what an 1/8 is and a 1/16. It's real simple, short video to help those out. Okay, let's move on to our next paper. Grab this from your collection. Up here, you'll notice it says Adventure. At the top of the D, what you're going to do is measure up 1/8 from the top of that D, because we want to be able to fit and make a mark. So we got our mark up here. So now all you need to do is, with your pencil, measure down 3 9/16. Make a mark. At the tip of the ship, or the very front there, we're going to do the same thing. We are going to measure 1/8 of an inch over to the left. Now all we have to do from that point is measure over 3 9/16, right like this. I'm going to stick this on my paper cutter. And the first thing that I want to do is just cut this strip off. This is a trim piece that we will be putting back on the owl pocket. So I'm just going to trim that just like that. And then I'm just going to, my next cut's going to be trimming across here, and then I can cut down that way. So let's do that. We're going to need this. First things first, take a pencil right on the right hand side of this gear. Make a mark, and we're going to cut. Grab your owl page. Just set that down right like that. Take your scissors, and we're going to trim that to fit. Let's glue that down. Perfect. That's done. Now, what's going to happen here is I'm going to turn this, let's see, that's how it goes with the pop right there. Anyway, looking at it like this, make sure that you're going to fit in there first. Then all we are going to do is stick this on our paper cutter and cut from tip to tip right in half. This is what you should have. So before we go any farther with this particular piece, we are going to ink just on the outside, not in between. Not on that side at all. Just the outside. And we are going to glue this down. I'm going to start with this one. And I'm going to bring it right on up to that score line. making sure I'm even. And that's the first one I usually do. Anyway, we're going to do the same thing with this. And this one just comes right on up to that score line. Just like that. You should still be able to fold in. Grab this piece, which is off of this that we've been working on, measure over 3 9/16 and cut it. Place your piece down. If you need to do any trimming, do so. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go from this tip all the way to this tip. So let's cut there. Let's ink around the edges here and here, here and here. Then what we're going to do is do the same thing we did for that, gluing that down and the other piece just like that. So let's do it. Grab that final last piece, flip it over, measure over 3 9/16 of an inch and cut it. Let's go ahead and ink around the edges. Okay, once you've done that, fold this over and we're going to glue that down right there. In your reserves, let's cut out timeless memories. We're going to do the same thing we did before. We are going to need our pop-up squares or dots, whatever you're using. Let's ink around our edges first and find our black skinny piece of cardstock in our reserves. What we're going to do to this is the same way we did before. Placing it down, leaving a little bit of a black border around there, all the way around. Okay, open this up. Let's go ahead and have our things go right on in there. And we are going to mount this right here. Now you can open it back up. If you were to flip it over, it'd be over on this side. In your paper pack, you will find this. We're going to measure over 3 7/8 of an inch and cut that right on down. Put the larger half in reserves for a moment. Now let's measure over 3 7/8 of an inch and cut it this way. Okay, this piece here, you're going to put this with that last sheet of 8.5 by 11 black cardstock. That is for the lid, so let's set that off to the side. Now, looking at it like this, where you have the keys and the roses in the quarter, measure over 3 7/8 of an inch and cut it. This piece, hold this off to the side really quick. Let's go ahead and ink around the edges of this. Also, I have a tip for you for cleaning off these daubers. Like, for instance, I don't know if you can tell, but this, I was using the wrong dauber. I couldn't find my Toffee Crunch dauber I've been using. So it's more of a rusty brown color here. Well, to clean these, what I usually do is I put stamp cleaner right on here and I go run it under the faucet and I get out and all the ink out of it, and then I blot it on a paper towel and it cleans these. So that is one tip for you for cleaning your daubers and reusing it for different colors. Okay, we have this set off to the side. Let's grab this. Flip this over, and you can place this any way you like, but this gets glued down to the bottom of our explosion box. So let's go ahead and glue that down. So we got that down. We can place that back out of the way. Fold this over like that. Go ahead and just put an X so you know not to put anything on this square. This square is the one that actually attaches to this, so make sure that we don't accidentally glue anything down and waste our paper. Grab this piece, and what we're going to do is measure over 3 9/16 and cut it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to trim this down to make it 3 9/16 by 3 9/16. So I will let you go ahead and do that trimming. And I'm going to do that So we are 3 9/16 and 3 9/16. And what we want to do is, looking at this here, we are going to stick this on our paper cutter, and we are going to cut from this tip down this tip. So it's going to separate and give you 2 triangles, just like we did before. Before we go any farther, we are going to do the inking around the edges, of course. Place it down to make sure you're going to fit in there, and you should fit just fine. I do. So once we ink around this edge and that edge, we are going to glue this one down here, and then this one gets glued right here. So let's do that. So we have that. Flip that on over like this. Grab this. We got this in reserves, and we're going to take it out. Measure over 3 9/16 of an inch and cut that. Measure over 3 9/16 and cut that. Make sure that this will fit here, and it should. Now just cut from this tip all the way down to this tip. And we'll do the same thing we just did. Now that we have our pieces, we're going to ink around the edges and glue these right on down here. Okay, let's go ahead and fold it in. So the black with the X is on the bottom, and we are looking at Timeless Memories. Let's attach our twine or whatever you're going to be using. Now I will tell you that hot glue is good for this, but what we are going to do is we want to attach a piece right here. And you'll want a piece that's long enough, so if you want to start with a longer piece and then cut it down, that's fine. Okay, and then the next one gets glued right underneath here. So you should have enough to tie something there. Okay, let's grab our score tape, pull this over to us. It is time to mount this. And when you mount this, you are going to have it like this. This is what yours should look like. Let's remove our score tape, and now we are going to mount it just as I said before, leaving a little bit of black around here, being clear of our fold. So let's do that. We're going to work on this one. Actually, it's going to be easier for me to put it like this so you can see better. In your reserves, you will find this piece, measure over 3 7/8 of an inch, and cut it. Now we're just going to measure over 3 7/8 and cut that. Our final piece is 3 7/8 by 3 7/8. Let's go ahead and ink around the edges and set this off to the side when you are done. In your reserves, you will see this. We are going to cut this out. So let's start there. Okay, set that there. Grab one of your 4" by 4" scrap squares, measure over 3 7/8 of an inch, and cut it. Grab your scoreboard, and I have this laid down where it's 4 inches across, and then we are 3 7/8 inch tall. At the 1/2 inch mark, go ahead and score a line, and we're going to fold on that. Now before we go any farther, place this down and make sure that you are going to fit in there. I do. Just slide that right on over where your flap is in the back until it covers. And we're just going to pinch that and apply some glue and get that to stick. Let's pull this off to the side. Okay, grab your pencil And the first thing that we are going to do is right above this sign, I am going to trim it. And I'm just going to make a mark, and I'm going to show you where it is, right on that line there that separates the weathered creamy look from this brown strip. And so it's right on that green. Let's go ahead and trim that all the way across. This piece here, just set off to the side. We're going to need that in a moment. Okay, with your pencil, and I'm going to show you, right on the left-hand side of the S, so it's right after the E here, you can make a mark like that. I think you can see it right here. This is where we are going to cut down. So let's go ahead and trim on down. Okay, this is the easy part. We are going to trim to fit. Stick this down here so that you can still see just a hair of black showing here and a hair of black showing there. Use your pencil and mark where we need to trim off. At the same time, if you move this over just a little bit, you can see the bottom of this black, the fold up. We're just going to make a mark where we need to be. So now we know where we need to trim to fit. Down this way and across this way. So let's do that. Let's make sure we are going to fit, and I'm fitting. We're going to ink around the edges. Once you've inked around the edges, it's okay. We can go ahead and glue that down. So let's glue that down. Okay, flip that down. We're going to get this piece. In your reserves, you will find this. Measure over 3 3/4 inches and cut it. Let's do some quick trimming. If you were to place this down right here, you'll notice our cuts will allow us to fit. So all you're going to do is take a pencil and mark down where this needs to be to fit in here, and then we're going to trim it. Let's verify we fit. And I fit. Let's ink around our edges, and then we're going to just glue that right on down. Okay, on the back side of this, we are just going to cut right down the middle on this. Once you've done that, we're just going to measure in the half of this and slice these in half. I have both of my pieces here, by the way. I have them backed up together. Okay. If your measurement is a little bit off, don't worry about it. Grab one of these. Okay, now in your reserves you're going to find one of these. All I'm going to do is put this up so I have a little bit of black showing so that when I do my thing it will be even. I'm just going to make a mark. These are quick trims with the, instead of having to get the ruler out and measure everything, I'm just going to mark right here on the black cardstock what measurement I need to fit this inside comfortably, showing a little black around the edges. So now, once I have my pencil mark, I'm just going to cut this right on down. Okay, we've trimmed this off. Measure over 3 inches and cut it. And then what we're going to do is measure over 3 inches again and cut it. So you'll have 2 3-inch strips. Okay, we've got 2 of these, 3 inches across here. Go ahead and score at 2 1/4 inches on this one, and then 2 1/2 inches we're going to score. Okay, the one that is the one that only has the smaller, if you look at them right now, there's one that's scored at 2 1/4, and then one was scored at 2 1/2. The one that was scored at 2 1/2, we're going to grab that. Let's close this up. Just wrap it around the tab around the back. Glue that down. Okay. The other one, we're going to do the same thing, but, oh, I got glue on me. But we're just going to lay that over the other, like so. And then we're going to glue this side down. Whoops.
crazy with my glue again. Okay, so that is what we have so far. Let's open these up. Place this down on the inside. Make a mark where we're going to trim it to fit. And let's cut where we need to be. I'm going to quickly just go around the edges here. And we're going to glue that down. Grab a magnet, and all we're going to do is put a little dot right here, place one side. Make sure that when you come over you are going to reach, and it's going to be able to put the mate over here. You should be fine if you place these accurately. Grab your next one. My cut job was a little off, so. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to trim this to fit and glue it on down over the magnet. Oops, didn't quite get that side here. Okay. Take the mate to the magnet. Once your glue has dried, plop it on down there like I've done. Put a dot in the middle. Now bring this over. Now you know this is where the mate goes. We're going to do the same thing with this. We're going to place it down, measure up where we need to be, trim it, ink around the edges, and we're also going to do that for the outside here. Measure up, trim it, ink around the edges, and we're going to be gluing those down. So let's do that. Okay, I've got mine down. The sentiment, moments with you, let's cut that out. Okay. Okay, with your moments with you, we're going to cut moments, and you're going to cut it right after the S, pretty close there. The moments, we are going to cut just on the outside there. We are going to ink around the edges. Set that off to the side. We are going to cut with you. So I'm like this, and we're going to ink around the edges here. In your reserves, you have this. There's a bunch of keys. And we are going to cut one out. I'll take that one. And all we're going to do is fussy cut around it. We're going to ink around the edges. And then we'll be ready to finish up this first layer. Okay, the first thing that needs to be done is this, and I just go right down in here. Now the tip, we're going to go right on the outside of this one, and some of the top peeks up and over, and I got a little too much glue. Scrape some of that glue off there. Okay, there. Now moments gets glued down right on the other side of that. That's right up there. With you, just line it up there. this part is done, flip it over. This is going to mount just like this. So score tape around the outside, 3 in the middle, and let's mount that just like that and move on to our next. Let's go ahead and grab our next piece like this, and I'm going to work on it mine like this, where I have the triangles like this, because it's going to plant right under here. And if you would like, looking at your paper like this, if you were to pinch this, put an X, you'll know that that's the part that's going to be glued down to the panel. Okay, let's start. Grab this piece out of reserves, and what we're going to do is measure over 3 and 9/16 and cut it. Okay, and looking at it like this, let's go ahead and trim just on the other side of the gear here, and I'll show you what that looks like. Now looking at him like this, upside down, measure over 3 and 9/16 and cut it. Let's make sure he fits in there, and once you do that, we're going to ink around the edges, and he gets glued down right here. So let's do that. In your reserves, you will find a piece like this. Let's cut it to 3 and 9/16 of an inch by 3 and 9/16 of an inch. And once we do that, we're going to ink around the edges and do exactly like we did there, and it gets glued down in this corner. So this is where we're at. In your reserves, you will find this. I have mine flipped upside down because I'm going to measure over from this side 3 and 9/16 of an inch and cut it. Okay, let's measure over 3 and 9/16 of an inch and cut it, and then we're going to do that again. Measure over 3 and 9/16 of an inch and cut it. Okay, we are going to cut these to fit. This one here is going to place just like that. So from this tip, we are going to cut down to this tip, and then we'll ink around the edges and glue that down. And on this one, we're going to cut from this corner down here to divide the pieces, ink around the edges, and it gets placed right here. So let's do that. So we should be at this point together. Let's flip this side over. In your reserves, you should find this. We're going to measure over 3 and 9/16 and cut it. This piece is going to go down here. So we're going to cut from this tip all the way to here, ink around the edges, and we're going to glue that down. This is where we should be. Let's move on to this. Alrighty, in reserves, you will find this. Let's just turn that around. We're going to measure over 3 and 9/16 of an inch and cut it. This is what you should have. Flip it over, measure over 3 and 9/16 and cut it. Let's go ahead and ink around the edges. We can turn this just like this in front of us now. We're going to ink around the edges, and we are going to glue that down. In your paper pack, you will find the cutout sheet. We're going to carefully maneuver our scissors in here and cut the hat out. Okay, this goes in our reserves. So all we're going to do is fussy cut around this, and then we're going to ink around the edges. Okay, once we've done that, we're just going to glue that right on down like this. So let's do that. When you're gluing this down, make sure that the feather does not go over into your score mark. So you just got to position them. Now let's get our piece for here. In your paper pack, or in your reserves actually, you will find the sentiment, "Discover the world." Let's cut that out. You're going to ink around the edges, and once you've done that, grab a scrap piece of your skinny black cardstock, and we're going to mount it to the black, leaving a little bit of black around like a frame. Once you've mounted it to the black cardstock, we're going to put some of the 3D pop-up on there, and then we are just going to glue that or place it right like this. So let's do that. You should have an X in the corner that you don't want to put anything. And all we're going to do there, in your reserves, find this piece, measure over 3 9/16 of an inch and cut it. Okay, this should be fitting here. So all we're going to do is cut diagonal from here to here. We're going to ink around the outside edges, and we're going to glue that down right there. We're going to get our twine, and all I'm going to do is just flip this over a little bit. Attach that. And then down here, attach the other. Tie it. Okay, we're at this point, everything's down, and we just need to get the piece for here. So in your paper pack, you will find this sheet, and we do want this. However, we are going to cut this, looking at it this way, so we don't end up cutting into something we might need. So looking at it like this, measure over 3 7/8 of an inch and cut that. Put the other sheet in reserves, measure over 3 7/8 of an inch and cut it. Okay, flip that over. We're going to ink around the edges. I lost my dauber again. I'm being forced to open a new pack here of sponge daubers. Okay, we're going to ink around the edges really good, and then we're just going to glue that right in the center, making sure that we don't go on any of our score marks. We are done with the bottom layer. Let's set this off to the side. Now you have 2 other layers here. Find which one is the next largest size. This is the next largest, and we're going to begin to work on this. Okay, in your reserves you will find a scrap piece like this. We're going to use that. And you will also find this. We're going to measure over 3 1/2 inches and cut it. Now looking at it like this, measure over 3 1/2 inches and cut it. Actually, this larger one that we grabbed from reserve, put that back in reserve. So we're going to use the excess cut off of this. So all we're going to do at this point, this should fit perfect because it's the same size, it's the trimming off this. We are going to ink around the edges of this, and we're also going to ink around the edges of that. So I've inked around the edges. Now you can use score tape on this. We're not going to back it with any black cardstock. All I'm going to do is put a little bit of glue down here. I think it's okay for this. We're not going to be stuffing a bunch of stuff in here, I don't think. I think the glue will work just fine. So we're just going to mount that so we have a pocket like so. And all we need to do now is find our sentiment. And we're going to need our pop-up squares or dots, whatever you're using. So let's grab into our reserves. Let's go ahead and cut out the cherished memories. And I just cut off part of that. I'm going to go ahead and ink around my edges. I'm going to grab the rest of that thin piece of black cardstock. We're going to mount this like we've been doing, leaving a black frame around after we cut it. I applied my 3D little circles on here, and all I'm going to do now is remove the backing, and this is going to get placed right here. So let's go ahead and get ours down. Once you've got that, all we need to do is glue that right on down. So let's do that. In your paper pack you will find this, and what I'm going to have you do, because there may be something we need on this side, but I need a piece off here because we're going to flip this up and plant that there. So stay with me on this. Just on the left side of that hat, we're going to cut all the way down. So let's do that. Okay, we need some pieces off this for a few things, but what we're going to do is measure over 3.5 inches and cut. Stick this off to the side. We will get to that one in a minute. Now what you want to do is measure over 3.5 inches and cut it. This one goes in reserves for right now. Flip this over, flip that up, and see if you are going to fit. You should have a nice fit looking just like this. If you put it this way, you might not fit so well. But if you go like this, you will. Let's ink around our edges, and then we are going to glue that down right like that. I got mine glued down. We're going to work on this. That piece that I had you stick off to the side, we'll start with that, and you will fit very well, giving you some black on either side. Grab one of your 3 3/4 inch by 3 3/4 inch black reserve pieces of cardstock. What you are going to do is measure over 3.5 inches and cut it. Place it on your scoreboard to where you are 3.5 inches wide by 3 3/4 long. At the 1/2 inch mark, we are going to score it, and then at 9/16, I gotta move mine over, at 9/16, we're gonna score that again. So let's fold. I think I got a little bit off there. That's all right. Now with our tabs off to the left, looking at it like this, we're just going to place it right over there. We're going to pinch it, turn it over, and glue our tabs back behind it. So let's do that. Now you may notice just a slight bit of your little fold out here being slightly longer than this. That's okay. It's going to blend right on in with the cardstock when we place it, like so. It'll be just fine. Grab this out of reserves. We won't be cutting on this, but what we're going to do is place this down like this. Look where your outer score mark is. Draw a line, and we're going to trim that to fit now. We're going to ink around our edges here, and then we are going to glue that down right like that. So let's grab this out of reserves, and looking at it like this, is that right? It is right. Measure over 3 5/8 of an inch and cut it. Okay, now the first thing we want to do is trim this down so it's going to fit here. Us cutting it at 3 5/8, this should fit top and bottom is what I'm talking about right now, and it does. So to get this part to fit, measure over 1 inch and cut it. This is what you should have. Now measure over 2 3/4 of an inch and cut it. We're going to ink around the edges, but first place this on yours and make sure you are fitting. I am fitting, and you should too. Let's ink around the edges here, and then we're just going to glue that right on down. This is what we should have. Now normally I use score tape to glue these down or underneath here. I think it's okay if we use glue. So let's apply glue to the back of this and position this right like that. Let's grab this out of reserves, measure over 3 1/2 inches and cut it. Put this one back in reserves. Let's just flip that right on up. Line like this. And now all I have to do with my pencil, make a mark, and I'm going to trim that to fit. And the next step for us is we are going to ink around the edges of this, and we're just going to plant that right on there and glue that down. So let's do that. This is now complete on this side. We're going to work on here now. In your reserves, you will have this, measure over 3.5 inches and cut. All we have to do is lay this down. This should be 3.5 by 3.5 inch for a cut, but I'm just going to do it the easy way, making a mark and cutting. Now remember that piece that's sitting in our reserves? We're going to grab that. That should fit exactly across. If we're holding it like that, we're going to ink around the edges here and ink around the edges here. Okay, let's grab our glue. We're just going to put a thin line of glue, oh that's a lot, on 3 of the sides, and we are going to place this right at the top here. In your reserves, grab your cutout sheet. Let's cut out that hat. Once you've cut out your hat, you will ink around the edges, and all we're going to do is glue this straight on down here. This gets glued down now to that. Let's flip that up. You should have a piece in your reserves that looks like this. All we are going to do is place that down, make a mark, and trim this to fit. We will then ink around the edges and glue that right on down. Mine's glued down. Let's move on to this one. In your reserves, you will find this. The first thing we want to do is right on the left side of the scroll here, put a mark. Let's trim that. You should have a sheet that looks like this now with that trim off. Now just measure over 3.5 inches and cut it. The larger piece goes in our reserves. Now measure over 3.5 inches and cut it. Put this off to the side, measure over 3.5 inches and cut it. Go ahead and ink around the edges of both of these. Oops. Okay, first things first. Let's apply some glue to the back of this. Flip this up, and we're going to glue that down. Next, apply glue to this and glue that down. In your paper pack, you will find this. On the back is this. Measure over 3 9/16 of an inch and cut it. I already cut mine. I forgot to turn on the video camera. But anyway, measure over again 3 9/16 of an inch and cut it. Let's ink around our edges. Once you've inked around your edges, we are going to put our score tape on the back around like a frame and 3 down the middle. And then we are going to mount this right in the center. Okay, the second layer is complete. Let's go ahead and set this off to the side. We're now working on our top layer. In your paper pack, you will find this sheet. On the back, it looks like this. We're going to measure over 3 3/8 of an inch and cut it. Put the larger piece in reserves. Now let's measure over 3 3/8 and cut it. Then we're going to do that again, measure over 3 3/8 and cut it. So we're going to have 2 pieces. For now, stick that back in reserves. Put one of these off to the side. Let's go ahead and place this down. This should be a nice fit. Let's go ahead and ink around the edges. In your paper pack, you will find this sheet. On the back, it looks like that. All we're going to do is cut out Cherish. That of reserves. Now, all I'm going to do is cut just on the left side here of that. Almost looks like an upside down spoon. We're just going to cut straight on up that way. And we're going to do the same here. Let's ink around the edges. And all we have to do now is apply glue and mount that just like that and glue it down. So let's do that. Now grab one of your smaller scrap squares, and all we're going to do to make sure we have a good fit is place this right on down over your piece here. Take a pencil, and you're going to want to have it the same width, 3 3/8, and we're just going to trim that. Let's grab our scoreboard. I am about 3.5 inches wide and 3 3/8 tall. At the 1/2 inch mark, let's go ahead and score. Then at 5/8, we're going to score again. I've got to move mine over just a hair. And we're going to fold. Now let's slip that right on over this. And glue that down. So the flap was at the bottom, so this is where we need to be. Grab this piece back out of reserves, and all we are going to do is measure over 3 1/4 inches and cut it. Now measure over 2 5/8 of an inch and cut it to fit. Let's see how we fit. You should have a good fit. Let's ink around the edges and glue that down. Let's work on the outside of this. In your reserves, you will find this piece. Take your pencil just on the right side of the tip of that train. We're going to cut it. So let's do that. This is what you should have. Now, because I like to stay consistent on the way I tell you to measure over, just flip that upside down. Measure over 3 1/4 inches and cut. Okay, the next step we want to do is just right underneath the train. Make a mark with your pencil and trim that. We're going to center this. Now all we have to do is measure over 2 3/4 of an inch and cut it. Your piece should now be able to fit nicely right on there. Let's ink around the edges, add glue to the back, and mount that. Okay, set that off to the side. In your reserves, you should have a piece like this. We are just going to cut a piece that is 3 3/8 wide and by 3 3/8. So if you measure over 3 3/8, cut it, we'll turn it, measure over the other way. Go ahead and flip this up. This should be a perfect fit. Ink around your edges and glue that down. I've got mine down. Now all we need to do, you can use score tape or glue on this, and we are going to glue that right on down. So let's do that. Let's move on to this one. Let's set this off to the side. Grab this, ink around your edges. Before we go any further, you'll find this in reserves. What I want you to do is cut memories out, but how we're going to do that is just place this on your paper cutter and cut straight this way, and then you're going to cut that. So what you'll end up with is a long strip with memories and part of this. And I'll show you what you should have. Now this is used in another part of the top layer, but we're going to set this off to the side so this doesn't get used. We're going to set that whole piece off. Now, all you need to do is flip it over on some of your pieces. You're free to cut on this. You're going to cut a 3 1/8 by 3 1/8 piece of this. Let's turn that. Let's go ahead and make sure that you are going to fit inside, and you should. Let's ink around our edges, and we are going to glue that down. Now, in your reserves, you're going to find this piece. We are going to cut these out. So let's do that. Once you've cut these out, you should have 4. We're going to ink around the edges. And we're just going to use a very small amount of glue. We're going to flip this over, and we're just going to put it on these 2 sides, leaving this side alone. And we're just going to stick these right in the corner. And then this one would get placed here. This one here, and this one goes here. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we're here. This larger gear we're going to cut out, but I'm going to show you something that I do to cut down the time that it takes to actually cut out in between. So the first thing I do is I just cut on the outside like this. So you come up with this. Take your scissors, and all you do is cut in here and here. Then use your scissors to push it back behind, and it will save a lot of time from having to cut in and out. Just like that. I have saved so much time just by cutting the gears out in between things, just by going like that. So let's go ahead and finish up cutting this out. If you did it the way I did it, now all you have to do is flip it over. Just use your glue right back down, back behind there. And now just press it down for these little notches to glue down and get out of your way. Once you've done that, let's go ahead and ink heavily around the edges there. And I got things sticking to me. Once you've done that, all you have to do now is place some glue and mount that right in the center. In your reserves, you will find this Life's Little Moments. Let's just first start by cutting this out, and then we'll trim it to what we need. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Grab your ruler and grab your pencil. I've got my ruler lined up. At the 1/4 inch mark, line it up with the bottom of the side of the M here. Then just bring your pencil over to the edge of your ruler and make a mark. Now put your ruler up to the side of the big, the G, measure over 1/4 inch and make a mark. Let's go ahead and trim on each side. Now grab your ruler, place it right at the top of the F, measure up a 1/2 inch, make a mark, bring it down here right underneath the memories, measure down a 1/2 inch, and let's go ahead and trim. Let's ink around our edges. Now grab one of your squares. It really makes no difference which one. And we're going to do a quick trimming on this. Place it up in the right hand corner, leaving a little bit of black showing. Now stick this on your paper cutter and trim down this way so that you still have about a 1/16 of black showing. Grab your scoreboard, place this down, and measure over about a 1/16 of an inch from the side of your little sentiment here and score it. And then from that line, you'll want to measure over about 1/8 of an inch. Oops. And score it again. And we're going to fold on those. And then if you want, you can trim off some of the excess here. Now all we're going to do is attach it to the side there. Flip it over. Glue that down. Let's get our wings. On your reserve, in your reserves, you'll find these 2 wings right here. And all we're going to do is fussy cut these out, and then we're going to ink around the edges. Okay, for the inside, I'm just going to do the quick little measuring trick by laying this down so I can still see the black, making a mark with my pencil, and then trimming this so that it will fit in here. So let's do that, and then we're going to ink around the edges and glue it down. This is ready to be glued down to this. I'm just going to apply my glue now. And mount that. Okay, let's go ahead and flip that on over. In your reserves, grab one of your gear pages and cut 3 3/8 by 3 3/8 square. And then we're going to ink around the edges and we're going to glue it down. Let's move on to our next one. Now in your reserves you should have this sheet. Measure over 3 3/8 of an inch and cut it. Now all you need to do is measure over 3 3/8 of an inch and cut that. And then we're going to ink around the edges. In your reserves, look for this. If you've already cut into it, then you'll grab your other paper out, but you should be able to have this piece. It's small. It's from when we cut across, and so all you're going to want to do is just lay this down over your thing, and you're going to cut 3 3/8 across, or you can lay it down like I have and just pencil mark it and cut it. And then we're going to ink around the edges. Once you've done that, all we are going to do is add a little glue to the bottom and the sides, leaving this part, the top, without glue. And we're just going to mount that to make a little pocket. Now in your reserves, on your cutout sheet, let's go ahead and cut this gear out that's next to the guy. And we're going to fussy cut around and ink the edges. And the next piece that we are going to need is the timepiece. Now when I cut this out, I didn't fussy cut around the chain. I just went around this. So let's do that, and we'll ink around the edges on that too. Okay, flip your pieces over and let's put some of our 3D foam dots on the back of each. Now once you've done that, place the timepiece over that timepiece. And then the gear you can stick right here. And that is going to place right here. Flip that up. In your reserves, you will have this. Cut a 3 3/8 inch by 3 3/8 inch piece. Ink around your edges, and now let's glue that down on the back side. Let's move on to this panel. In your reserves, you will have this. Measure over 3 3/8 of an inch and cut it. We're going to ink around our edges. After you've inked around your edges, in your reserves, you will have this. We want to cut a 3 1/8 by 3 1/8 inch square out of this. So let's do that. And then we're going to ink around the edges. Now all we need to do is apply glue to this and mount it in the center here. Now this has been sitting off, and just on the right side of what looks like a little spoon, we're just going to snip there, and we'll do it over on this side too. And I have some cream color. I'm gonna just trim this down a little bit. Let's ink around our edges. Now with this piece, all we're going to do is measure up the same and cut. Before we go any farther, you are going to place this down right on top, bringing it all the way over. If this piece hangs over too far, you are going to need to trim this down. Now in your reserves, you do have a black strip. You want the one to where if you were to place this down, you would show a little bit of black top and bottom. Let's go ahead and glue this down, and you're going to bring it all the way over to the left. And once it's over to the left, just measure on over about an inch over. Now all you have to do on this is grab your scoreboard, and just on the right hand side here is just score one line and fold it back. We're going to go ahead and slide that right on over like this and attach. Grab a magnet and place it. Now grab your other piece, make sure it's going to fit, and it should if it's the same as the other. Apply some glue, and I'm going to put some extra around here so it gets it. And glue that down. Now grab the mate to that magnet, let it find where it needs to be, and apply a little glue. And let's go ahead and glue that down. Now in your reserves, grab this piece and cut a 3 3/8 by 3 3/8 piece. Let's ink around our edges, flip this up, and let's glue that down. Now we're going to cut another piece, 3 3/8 of an inch by 3 3/8 of an inch. Now just glue that down right to the center. Now what we're going to do before we start the cone is we are going to place all of our layers on top of each other. This is the bottom layer. And then we have our other two. This is the top layer. We're going to flip these over and we are going to do our score tape around the outside, 3 in the middle, on each one of these. Okay, let's put the middle layer on. I've removed my score tape and we want to make sure that we get this right. I'm just going to kind of fold these in like so. This, the time to remember, is going to go off to this side. So anyway, all I'm going to do is center it over this square like so. Open it up and smooth it down. Here's the top layer. Just going to fold in these as best I can. Remember, Life's Little Moments is off to the left-hand side. And I'm going to center this as best I can. I'm having a hard time seeing. I think that's good. Open it up and smooth it down.